Just think if it were possible for 17,000 Christian congregations to come together in a coordinated effort to alleviate hunger in some of the most depressed areas of the world. Sounds like a logistic nightmare, doesn't it? Do you know what's happening as we sit here right now? How? Well, right after this break, you will find out.
It has stood the test of time. God's book, the Bible, still relevant in today's complex world. It is written, sharing messages of hope around the world.
Welcome to this week's It Is Written Canada television program. We're happy that you're here. Joining me, I have two special guests. I have James Astleford and Jason Brooks, and they are both with the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
Wow, you figure after all these years, I finally figured it out. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us. And we're going to get to introduce you in just a second, but you know, off the top, I said, James, 17,000 Christian congregations coming together to help provide food for some of the hungriest people in the world. Is it possible? Is it happening? I said yes. How is that working? How does that happen?
It's working very well, Bill. Great to be back on the It Is Written program.
I'm glad to have you.
And ADRA Canada is very excited to be part of the Canadian Food Grains Bank. I think we've mentioned this in a previous program, but today we can talk a little bit more about it. Now, when I said Food Grains Bank, we're not talking about the kind of bank that you go and put your check in and pay your electricity bill at and stash away your millions. It's the kind of bank where people work together to alleviate hunger. And the Canadian Food Grains Bank is an organization in which 15 church-based organizations representing 32 different denominations in Canada, and as you said, that's some 17,000 church congregations across the country, are working together in this coordinated effort to solve the food problem, the hunger problem that we have in our world.
Okay, so how does it actually work?
Well, the bank has been working for many years, and initially it was in the rural areas of Canada where farmers would donate certain fields or certain crops from their farms and say, this will go to the Food Grains Bank. And that food would be collected separately from the normal marketing procedures, and that would go to feed hungry people in Africa, for instance. But now, since then, the program has expanded, and you can give your grain or you can give a donation of cash. And you can give it to any one of the 15 church-based agencies that are in the Food Grains Bank. And from my point of view, of course, that includes ADRA Canada. Or you can just give it to a general account. So there really are 16 accounts. And programs are then run by those 15 faith-based agencies around the world to alleviate hunger. And there's also the general account. And in addition, the Canadian government, through CIDA, the Canadian International Development Agency, gives one of its most significant grants for alleviating poverty to the Canadian Food Grains Bank. So in effect, when you give a donation of $1 or $100 or whatever to the Canadian Food Grains Bank, that attracts an effective match from the CIDA account of 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 4-to-1, depending on the arrangement of the particular project. And the exciting thing, Bill, is it's not just those 15 agencies working independently. We cooperate together.
Right.
And so sometimes an agency may be struggling and the other agencies will help. For instance, recently with the program that we had in responding to the Haiti crisis, some of the other Food Grains Bank members who weren't involved with the Haiti relief gave some of their resources to us.
Oh, I see.
And similarly, we have helped some of the other members when they've been doing projects that we could help them with cash where we didn't have a project going on the ground.
Well, I mean, Christian organizations coming together to putting the gospel message into a very practical application, I think is wonderful. Now, let me just clarify one thing. So, I'm not a farmer. I can contribute to the Food Grains Bank through a monetary donation. How does that work?
Absolutely. You can either donate online or by sending a check to the Food Grains Bank or to any of the 15 agencies and mark your donation for the Food Grains Bank account.
Okay, so I could put a donation to ADRA Canada and say this is designated for the Canadian Food Grains Bank.
Yes, we often get many of our supporters who'll send in a donation and they'll write CFGB on it, a code for Canadian Food Grains Bank. And then we hold that money separately for the work that we do with the Food Grains Bank.
Now, Jason, we want to get you into the conversation here and get a little bit more information from James. Now, you are in West Africa.
That's correct.
And really are heading up a project that's a recipient of the help of the Food Grains Bank. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm the director of ADRA in Niger, Central West Africa, and we have a project financed by ADRA Canada through donations from the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And it's a large food security project. And food security means helping people to meet their own food needs requirements. So we're working with farmers in the fields with this funding that comes through Canadian Food Grains Bank and ADRA Canada to help farmers produce more food on less land and feed their families.
Now, let me just back up a second here, because you and I had a chance to chat a little while ago, and you're an American, and we don't hold that against you.
Thank you.
From Virginia. Now, how does a guy from Virginia end up heading up a project like this in Niger? Give me a quick, biography as to how you go from Virginia to Niger.
Sure. Well, first of all, my parents were missionaries in West Africa, so I'm an MK.
Okay.
Secondly, I was a pastor, pastoring here in the United States, right around the Washington, D.C. area. And, I just felt my heart really touched by the plight of the many millions of people around the world who are suffering without enough to eat. And my wife and I prayed about it. We're very much a team in everything we do. She works right alongside me in Niger and with our 3 children. And we, as a family, prayed about it and decided that God was calling us to do something more concrete in our case. And almost 4 years ago, I moved my family to Niger in Central West Africa, the hottest capital on earth. Niger is 80% in the Sahara Desert. It's 97% Muslim. And I'll be honest with you, it's a challenging place, but it's been a blessing for us as a family to feel like we're having a real impact there in Niger. And my wife and kids are in Niger right now. It's about 130 degrees there right now, Fahrenheit. And they're going to be coming to join me here soon in the States for a little break. But I think if they were here, they would tell you that they're really blessed to be able to serve God in this way.
Now, thus, you're not wearing the jacket and the tie.
These are my church clothes that I wear in Niger when I go to meet the government officials, and I can assure you, Bill, I'm a lot cooler and more comfortable than you are right now.
Oh, trust me, I can believe that.
Why didn't he bring them for us?
That's right. Now, James, the Canadian Food Grains Bank, is that something unique to Canada? Are other nations involved in this kind of an effort? Or?
No, this is very much a Canadian solution to a world problem. There are other similar kinds of arrangements in other countries. There is a similar organization in the U.S. that the Food Grains Bank occasionally talks to see how they're managing it. But no, this is a very effective means of reaching many different populations. And this has had significant impact in times of disaster, but also in the ongoing effort to tackle poverty at the very roots in the communities in which we work. And I think we've talked maybe on another time that we were together, Bill, about the tremendous work that the Food Grains Bank through ADRA has made an impact in Mongolia, for instance, which is a very cold country. So Jason, who's just here for the day, is cooling off from Niger. But our ADRA colleagues in Mongolia, working at -55 in the winter, are introducing the growing of vegetables to farmers. Well, people who weren't even farmers, so that they can feed themselves, where before they couldn't.
Now, excuse my ignorance here, but are they sending literally grain, or is it grain and money? I mean, what do you guys actually receive there? Do you receive grain and money, or just grain, or just money, or?
Well, let's ask Niger. What happens in Niger?
I can tell you what's happening in Niger. We work in a very dry area where farmers are unable to produce enough food to meet the food needs of their families. Even in a good year, they're only producing about 6 months of food supply, and more than 70% of the population depends on farming. And what we're doing with the Canadian Food Grains Bank project is we're teaching farmers techniques.
Oh, okay.
And,
so it's an issue of the techniques, the type of farming that they're doing that doesn't produce?
It's a combination of factors. There's a dramatically changing environment there, which makes the techniques that were used in the past not sustainable today. The desert is growing. Niger is 80% in the Sahara Desert, and the desert is getting larger. So we're combining agricultural techniques with agroforestry, meaning the planting of trees. And we're also, similar to what they're doing in Mongolia, teaching people to do vegetable farming outside of their short rainy season to augment their food supply. And if I could just give an example.
Sure.
Last year we planted over 1,000 family gardens. And I had a chance to talk with a lady. And I said, what does this mean for you, for your family? And she said, my son was here in the garden the other day helping me. And he said, Mom, I've seen other people eating vegetables, but we've never been able to have them before. He said, Mom, one day I'm going to be able to eat a carrot. And I tell you, I was really touched to think,
my goodness,
the challenge that they were facing, but also what this relatively small garden and this technical assistance provided for them meant for their household food security. It meant that their children would have food to eat, they'd have the strength and energy to go to school, and hopefully eventually break this cycle of hunger that exists there in your community.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and James, you've mentioned it on previous programs, you've been here with Ronald Kuhn, who you work with, you guys, and one of the things that sticks up for me is you reinforce this idea that it's sustainable, that it's not just, coming in with so many tons of grain, dumping it in there. Once that's gone, well, hopefully, more will come in. You really look for a systems approach, right, that says this is something that is sustainable. So is the Canadian Food Grains Bank providing resources and know-how, almost like a consulting, some know-how to help local farmers?
Yes, both. And if you go to the Canadian Food Grains Bank website, for instance, which will appear on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the tonnage of grains that has been shipped abroad, and that has been an integral part of the Food Grains Bank history, is actually delivering food.
Well, sure. Well, you got people starving. I mean, they need to eat right away. Let's get them
I can't
food.
eat a technique for lunch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need something else to put in my mouth. And this is where that immediate food assistance has been so invaluable. Or the seeds have been important, where people didn't have seeds to start with.
Yes.
One of the challenges of working in Niger or, say, Sudan, where I worked for a number of years, is that you have these hungry months. Jason's mentioned half the year, hungry months. And the challenge at that point is not to eat your seeds. And of course, it's very hard not to eat your seeds. And then you have nothing for next season. And the Food Grains Bank has, in many instances, provided seeds to get that whole process restarted. And then, as you've mentioned, the issue of sustainability is so key. So we move from relief to development, which in our case in ADRA is really in our name, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. We so often start with relief, but then move on to the underlying issues. How can people take care of themselves? There's no way that Canada can feed the world in terms of all the grain that we produce, but we can certainly make a huge difference in helping people to take care of themselves, like Jason has mentioned, by introducing very simple technological changes and skills to make that difference, so that they can then care for themselves and have that exciting moment where they actually are eating every day.
Well, to have a young man say, one day I'm going to eat a carrot, I mean, that's almost inconceivable to us here in the Western. I mean, Now, Jason, this project, how long has the partnership been with Niger and the Canadian Food Grains Bank?
We are in the second year with this
is
project
something
of
brand
a
new.
3-year project.
Oh, okay.
We did have a pilot project with them before, sort of sounding out the community, learning how to work in it, learning how to work with the people and understanding the needs. And that's a really key element. When you're talking about development, we go in and we seek to understand the issues in the community. What do the people themselves say that they need?
I see.
How would they address their problems if they had the resources to do it? And then what we do is we come alongside them and we assist them in a way, and we've already talked about sustainability, but the idea is we help people in a way that allows them to be equipped to help themselves. And we've worked in the area where the Canadian Food and Grains Bank project is for over 5 years now. And we know those communities in and out. We know all the leaders. They trust us. And they understand that the point is that by the end of this 3-year project, that they be able to carry this work forward themselves without our assistance. And we can move on to other issues. We can move from agricultural issues into water, into sanitation and education. Because even after that program is finished and people have been assisted in yield enhancement, in being able to grow new types of food, we're going to continue on with education, water, sanitation, health, because we're in it for the long term.
Yeah, I guess the sad reality is there's no shortage of issues to be tackled. How long has the partnership between ADRA and the Canadian Food Grains Bank been going on?
It's been going on for a number of years, and it's a relationship we'd like to see grow and expand, pardon the pun there. What excites me about what Jason was mentioning is that it's like there's a basket of solutions. It's not just one solution. There are various solutions. And as Jason and his team are involved in the long term, they're able to address so many of these other challenges and then make a difference, a positive difference. You mentioned water, Jason. I think you have quite a drilling operation going on, don't you?
We do. When we started into some of our food security and education projects, we were running into the same problem over and over again. Niger is a hot, dry country, and the majority of people lack access to good, clean water. And that prompted us to get into the sort of the well drilling business, you might say. And in this last year alone, we've drilled over 23 wells. And I tell you, to see the look on someone's face when for the first time in their village, without having to walk kilometers and kilometers, they're able to pump water right there on site. And it comes out pure and clean. And all the promise that holds for their health, it's amazing to see.
Now again, excuse my ignorance, but I thought you said 80% of the country is desert?
That's right.
So there is water. The problem is access to this water?
Yeah, interestingly enough, in this desert country, there's a large reservoir of underground water.
Oh, that's
but
interesting.
Being able to tap into it requires the kind of equipment and know-how that international NGOs like ADRA can bring. So, it's a great situation that the natural resource is there, and we can bring the expertise to access it. And it's really a blessing to people because you can go a few days without something to eat. But you won't last very long without water.
No, absolutely. That is incredible. You provided us with a short video clip, right? And I don't think we've seen it yet. I think we're going to see it. But I think you make a comment on there that the issue is not shortage of food in the world. It's almost like a distribution problem. So, I mean, there is enough food, to feed the hungry, except we need to distribute it a little bit better. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think that's one of the myths that we have, that there's a shortage of food in the world.
Yes.
Actually, there isn't. Even with the growing population, we used to talk about 6 billion. Now we're talking about 7 billion,
yes.
and the number keeps going
up.
bigger,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. There is still enough food. There's enough food in the world for everybody to actually get too much. In terms of the total food production around the world. As you've highlighted, Bill, the challenge is that it's unfairly distributed. And those of us in developed countries have so much food that we throw half of it away in our green bins at the end of the week because we've just got too much. So the problem of distribution is one that really needs addressing, and we think agencies like ours and the other agencies in the international community that work in such projects are trying to address that, making sure that there is a fair distribution, that people have fair access to the means of growing food, that they have the right to fish in ponds, they have the right to till their fields, to collect the food from their fields. And they have access to the know-how and to the inputs that maybe someone else has and that they don't have, which is the kind of things that Jason and his team are doing. And that's not just a global problem, it's affecting people.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure you're encountering families, men, women, children, whose lives are being impacted by what you do.
That's a concept we call food justice, and it's something that I really appreciate about the Canadian Food Grains Bank, is they talk about this concept of, is it fair? Is it fair that some have way too much and others are completely lacking? And I think the Christian answer to that is that we work for that sort of justice. We work for that sort of justice as Christians committed to the concept because of our faith.
This comes up in the Old Testament and the New Testament both, if you're wanting to look at the biblical basis why Christians are concerned about this. And this is why, for the Food Grains Bank, you have these 15 church-based or faith-based agencies tackling this problem, because for them it's a practical matter of their Christianity.
Yes, correct.
It's not just that we get together on a weekend and have some singing and praying or whatever, but we're concerned that people around the world, half the population of our planet, is not getting enough to eat every day. And Christians in Canada are saying this is not acceptable. And it's a broad spectrum. We've got the Catholics, the Baptists, the Anglicans, the Mennonites, the Adventists, all come together, the Salvation Army, and say, we have some theological differences, but on this we're all united.
That's right.
People must be able to eat. How can they even appreciate a God if the rumbling of their stomach is drowning out everything else?
Well, absolutely right. Well, gentlemen, our time just zips right by. We tend to hear a lot of stuff about what's wrong with this country, but I think this is definitely something that Canada has done right. That's right. Hats off to the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. If for nothing else, that to remind us of some of the suffering that is going on in the world, and that as Christians, every single one of us, has a role to play. We don't all get the opportunity to be there in the front lines, but we can all be praying for the work that you do, and we all can be making donations, to allow suffering and hunger to be eliminated, because it can be.
Amen.
Can be and is.
Yes.
That's the positive message. We hear so much about the failures of our world, but the projects such as this mean that people now actually are eating and enjoying a quality of life that's much better than what they had.
Well, gentlemen, on behalf of It Is Written, thank you for your fine work and for your service to humanity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at all the hungry people, the world says. Look at their faces. Look at their situations. Can't they feed themselves? We say yes. Yes, they can. The world has enough food for everyone. But not everyone has enough food, or gets their fair share, or lives in a land of peace or plenty. But guided by faith, driven by will, and inspired by belief, people everywhere are helping push back the relentless advance of hunger and feed a new hope. People are acting, feeding themselves and each other. there's enough food for everyone. Can we keep doing all that is possible to make this true for all people everywhere? Coming together, working together, breaking bread together. We can.
Well, gentlemen, thank you again for being here on the program. And Jason, safe travels.
Thank you.
As you make your way back to Niger. And
I
James,
really appreciate him coming for the day to tell us.
It's quite the distance, quite the commute. James, we're going to see you again on another program.
Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about ADRA, you can visit their website, adra.ca. And if you are interested in supporting the project that Jason is heading up in Niger, you can make a donation. Just specify Niger project, and that money will be directed specifically to this project here. Remember our website also. It is written canada.ca, our YouTube channel. You can even follow us on Twitter. Well, we're praying that the good Lord will give us the privilege of being back with you again next week. Until then, remember, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God.